name's Malki, biologist and plant expert with IVOrganic's 3-in-1 tree guard paint where we grow cool plants. And today, this is going to be our part 3 of 3 in regards to how to save the world with your home garden. This is my most important and favorite part of this 3-part lesson is growing native plants. Because what you're doing with native plants is you're creating habitat to support your local ecosystem in your own community, no matter where you are in the world. And I'm kneeled here in front of a variety of plants, and the first being towards the front is an ice plant, which is a small and lower ground cover of the pink variety, and behind it is a purple ice plant. If you zoom in over here, we're lucky to be able to show a flower here at the end of October, when this plant typically blooms all the way from spring, summer, and also early fall. But these are the last 2 flowers that are remaining. But the ice plant is a native to South Africa. So if you're watching this video in South Africa, these are the plants you should be growing. And another plant that I've got here behind me is the rock purslane. And take a look at how beautiful these flowers are here. Take a look at that. A beautiful addition to the landscape. Just to my right here, I'm going to share a couple of native plants, and then I've also got some seeds to my left that I'm going to describe. We're going to change this entire landscape out. You're allowed to grow things that are not native in your landscape. One of my favorites here is my lemon tree to the right, and if you want to take a look here, we just installed this earlier this year, and this is just one of a handful of lemons that we're going to get to enjoy this year, and it's also got some blooms as well that are happening. But again, the major bloom is going to happen in early spring or even late winter, and that'll produce most of the food crop that we'll get to enjoy the following winter. So it's okay to grow non-native plants in your landscape, but for the other area that you have, if you don't absolutely love it, as I love my lemon tree and I love my roses that are further behind me, this ground cover isn't necessary. We're going to exchange it for native plants, again, to create habitat, which are homes for the native animals, which include the insects and the birds and the hawks and the owls, and the entire food chain can be supported right here in your own garden. So we know the importance of bees, and plants like this do support bees, and they will get their pollen and their nectar and all their food source from it. But we can plant smarter plants, plants that are native to this area, the plants that your bees know and have grown accustomed to over millions of years, and to come and visit those plants in your home garden. So we know the importance of bees as humans are dependent upon it for our food supplies. It grows our vegetables and it grows our fruits, and humans are dependent upon bees, but it's not the only insect that us humans need to preserve. The monarch butterfly is on the verge of extinction, and many of us know about the threats of pesticides and chemicals upon the monarch butterfly. But again, the monarch butterfly is not the only insect as well. Take and listen to this clip when I interviewed Lisa Novick, of the Director of Outreach at the Theodore Payne Foundation, and what she had to say about the decline of just life in general over the last 40 years. Take a look at this.
We're at the Theodore Payne Foundation. They specialize exclusively in California native plants.
So if I live in Hawaii and I just saw this beautiful oak tree and I want it in my property, should I be looking to be planting this oak tree in my property if I lived in Hawaii?
No, 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 no.
Would it still attract those 5,000 beneficial insects and birds? Would they still benefit from the fact I just brought this oak tree into my property?
Okay, that's a great point. The point is that when you're in any part of the world, you've got the native insects and animals that live there. And if you plant the native plants, you're going to feed those insects and animals. But if you were to bring a California native oak into Hawaii, the Hawaiian native insects and animals wouldn't know what to do with it. It would be a nice shade tree for the humans, but why not plant a Hawaiian native shade tree? So wherever you are in the world, plant what is native to your region, because we are in a period of time when, for instance, since 1970, we've lost 52% of the world's wild vertebrate animals. So we've lost 52% of our fish, birds, animals, amphibians, and reptiles.
Since what year?
since 1970.
Wow. So in just like the last 40 years,
Right.
we've lost 52%.
Right. They've died out. I mean, not all the species have gone extinct, but their numbers are halved.
This is a big deal.
This is a big deal. And instead of getting depressed about it, take action. Plant the native plants that are from your region in your yard to help keep those numbers up. Help support the insects that feed the birds and the insects that feed the lizards. That's what we can do for positive action right where we live. You don't have to give up your job and move to the Amazon to save the Amazon rainforest. You can help the planet right where you live by planting natives. And that's what's so beautiful about this, is that 55% of the land in the United States is devoted to urban and suburban land uses. And imagine if that 55% were planted with natives, that could all be habitat to bring back the birds, bring back the butterflies, and use less water and create healthy, functioning ecosystems where we live, instead of depending on just patchworks of little wildlands that are left. We need to revitalize where we live with the native plants that make healthy, functioning food webs and ecosystems.
So I just want to reemphasize a point here. So if I live in Mexico City, Mexico, I need to do my research and find out what native plants grow there and introduce those species into my garden so that I can benefit that ecosystem that surrounds me in my home. If I lived in Hong Kong, China, then I should be doing my research to find out what native plants grow in Hong Kong, China, and bring those plant species into my garden to help benefit that surrounding ecosystem that exists over there. If you live here in Los Angeles, California, then I've just brought you to where you need to be, which is the Theodore Payne Foundation. If you go to your local garden centers, a lot of the employees that also work there don't know even what the word native plant means. They're probably going to sell you a cactus, which leads to my next point.
Okay.
Here in Southern California, I'm noticing a lot of people have now cashed in their lawns for, I did it at my property and got almost $4 per square foot for throwing my front yard lawn and replaced it with more drought tolerant plants, is what the city of Los Angeles required. And the first thing a lot of my neighbors did is they went for succulents. They're looking for cactuses, and everything's all prickly and sharp, and they threw out a lot of wood chips and a lot of rockscape, and that's it. But there's not one thing in their landscapes that are California native. Can you explain what what choices customers have when selecting a California native plant, and are cactus part of the diversity of our choices within, I mean, the numbers. We've just seen about a dozen choices that we have for California native plants, but how many choices do we have when it comes to picking a native plant? And then among that, what percentage of those are in fact cactus?
Okay, so in the entire state, we have about 6,000 different species, subspecies, and varieties of California native plants. And in the southern half of the state, about 3,000. So no worries about having a beautiful, varied plant palette to choose from. And if you look at the number of plants that are cacti from our 6,000 different species and subspecies, it's 1 to 2% of our 6,000 native species that are cacti.
Wow.
So people usually, when I say to them, I'm going to show you pictures of a native plant garden, they immediately think cacti and they think weedy looking things. But in fact, that is not a California native garden. What's native, especially to the LA region, is a chaparral garden or a coastal sage shrub garden. So here we're in the shade of oaks, where our native lilacs grow, our coffee berry, all sorts of beautiful evergreen plants that evolved in the shade of oak trees. And so really, the variety you have to choose from is huge. And if you see a gravelscape with cactus, it's not native.
That's really great. So, I mean, what garden center do you know carries over 6,000 plants for you to choose from? So there's a lot of choices when it comes to selecting from your native palette of plants you can actually bring in your garden and, again, support the ecosystem and habitats that surround you in your home.
And instead of this non-native landscape, what we're going to introduce is a variety of plants, including this showy penstemon, which is a beautiful plant which can grow up to 4 feet, and it provides a bluish purple color flower. We're also going to have this Indian mallow, and take a look at these beautiful yellow flowers. We also saw them in one of our video clips when we interviewed Lisa Novick at the Theodore Payne Foundation, and you can take a look at these cups. Maybe we can zoom in a little better here than we're able to over there. And you can see that these cups are full of seeds, and that's food for all the birds that feed upon seeds. And again, this is a native plant. And the last here is the woolly blue curls. And take another native plant to California and take a look at how beautiful those flowers are. A flower that's native to the local bees and the butterflies and the hummingbirds and what a lot of animals in this area and insects depend upon. So now we've just shared 3 ideas, and let me share some seeds as well that we're gonna introduce to this area. And then here we have a variety of California native seeds. The state flower of California, the California poppy. And then take a look at all the colors that we can also have here. Here's another California poppy and all these other colors, and I'll share with you some of their names here, such as the white yarrow, the Chinese houses, the globe gilla, bird's eye, tidy tips, a golden lupine, 5-spot, baby blue eyes, California bluebells, blue-eyed grass. So we're gonna have a variety of California native plants in this stretch of area all around my citrus tree. All of them are gonna attract pollinators. They're gonna pollinate itself as well as benefit the fruit trees, my lemon trees, my orange trees, the apple tree, the fig tree, and just on and on and on. All of your plants, and also your vegetables, your tomatoes, your peppers, your squash, and everything else are all gonna benefit by planting your native plants. So again, if you're native to California, I gave you a list of California natives to consider, but if you're in any other part of the country, or any other part of the world, look for those plants that are native to your area and bring those into your garden. By doing so, you will be saving the world with your home garden. Let's get started. So before we put this drought-tolerant ground cover down, as many Californians did for the purpose of the drought and the notices that went out over the last few years, this was a lawn. So we replaced the lawn with this drought-tolerant landscape, and now we're putting in place some drought-tolerant native plants. These plants require very little water. They require 80% less water than traditional plants. So keep your eyes out for native plants, plants that grow specifically to your area. What I wanted to point out over here, if you take a look, time to feed the soil. Take a look at this insect that's coming out. Where did it go? You can see some worms that are jumping around. Here it is. Look at this guy over here as well. Take a look. We got some spiders. Got some roly-polies or pill bugs. And then take a look at this worm. Take a look at this earthworm right here. So the first thing we're going to do is actually feed the citrus tree. We're still in fall, and it's a good idea to actually feed your plants 3 times a year with a granular fertilizer such as this. And you can see that it's going to take a while for it to break down. On average, it takes about 3 months, which is perfect as it lines up with the seasons. So we're going to feed the plants in the spring, the summer, and now the fall. This being fall, we're going to lightly feed the plant. And what this organic fertilizer will do is feed the earthworms, it'll feed the nematodes, it'll feed the beneficial bacteria, but we're not going to feed it as heavily as we typically would in the summer, as the metabolism of the soil is going to be a lot slower as the temperatures start to drop. So we're just going to lightly feed the soil, and as we water it, and here's that little worm, but it's going to feed all of the soil organisms, which will in turn break down this organic matter, which is made out of blood meal and feather meal and corn meal, and all of these are organic sources that are in there to feed the soil organisms, which will ultimately feed the plant and give it a wonderful bloom in the spring. You may also notice that we have all of these stakes, and I'll do another lesson on training the plant, but what we've done is we basically pulled the branches that are the tallest down to open the center of the canopy, which will increase the amount of light that comes in, which will ultimately fuel more leaves to support more fruit. The last thing I want to point out here real quick is the plant was installed in spring of this year, so 6 months ago, and we covered it with some white IVOrganics 3-in-1 tree guard paint, which is this product over here. Let me read it for you real quick. So IVOrganic, it's a 3-in-1 tree guard paint where you just add water, a natural tree trunk and branch barrier protection against damaging sunburn and insects and rodents for use on your roses, fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees and shrubs. It's a non-toxic, environmentally safe and organic product. This time we're going to use color brown. And if we take a look here on the cap, it says ideal for new plantings and transplants, save injured and damaged trees, prune and exposed surfaces. We're now going to recoat the plant. And the reason being is we're going to protect it from possible girdling, which is caused by rodents. They get hungry, especially in the winter, and they'll begin to gnaw on the bark to get to the saps, which are the life-giving sugars for the plant. But it's sweet enough for these rodents that they'll actually consider gnawing on your plant and compromising the life of your tree. The other thing to research and take a look at is something called sun scald. It's not as big of an issue here where we're located, but other parts of Los Angeles where it gets closer into freezing temperatures in the winter and warm afternoons, it could risk cracking your bark. And it's a phenomenon called sun scald, and it's typically a winter phenomenon. But what we're going to do by coating it is we're going to prevent the plant from overheating. And that's it. It's as simple as that. You can put a second coat if you'd like, and you can repeat this as often as 3 times a year. And now we've got IVOrganics 3-in-1 tree guard paint in the color brown, as you can see over here. What we're going to do next is now install these plants. When planting your plants, keep in mind how tall they're going to be at maturity. Your taller plants, put them in the back, and your shorter plants, put them in the front. And that'll give you a nice balance. I'll give you an example of what we did over here. So over here we have 5 layers of different types of ground covers and shrubs. The first in the front being the ice plant, which we said was native to South Africa. This will be coming out shortly as well. This is of the pink variety. Then we did the ice plant of the purple variety. As you can see, it's a little bushier and a little taller, hence we put it a little further back. And then to the right, we did the rock purslane, which is native to Chile. And you can see this one's a little bit taller and again, a little more shrubby, so a little higher up on this hillside. And then right behind me, we have the tropical milkweed, another mistake in the garden. Tropical milkweed is native to the tropics, and Mexico being one of those places. So if you're living in Mexico and watching this video, you could be planting tropical milkweed. But a lot of the nurseries here in the United States are selling tropical milkweed in the nurseries, as I accidentally picked this plant up, and we now know better that we should be looking for milkweed that are native specifically to this region, and we're going to be showing you what those look like in future videos. And then just behind this plant is another lemon tree, and this will give another layer of height behind it. So you can see how we're graduating with the landscape. And this is one other thing to consider when doing your landscape. Let's conclude over here. So here we are, we just loosened, took a little bit of time, the soil. This is California native soil. It's got a lot of clay. Come and take a look. Let me just show you how hard this soil is. If I hit it, you can see like it takes quite a bit of work to get into it. But we've just got a hole deep enough. And we're not going to improve it with anything. Unlike the lemon tree that's behind me, where we had to put in all this compost and we fertilize it every few months. Your native plants, the greatest part is you do nothing at all. Just going to pinch that and make sure that it's at the same level in the pot as it will be here in the ground. and not to plant it any deeper. And here we go. Our first plant that we've installed, the woolly blue curls. Let's get on to the next plant. So now we're just gonna scatter the wildflower seeds and just broadcast those in the open spaces, like so. We're then just gonna scratch the surface just 1/4 of an inch. Take a look lightly. You might be able to see some of these seeds right here on the top of the soil right here. And then we're just gonna scrape it lightly to hopefully get those seeds to fall about 1/4 of an inch below the soil level. And then to activate its growth, all you gotta do, add water. If you live in California, this is your best time of the year to be doing this, the fall. The fall will get these plants growing. They'll continue to grow throughout the winter, and by spring we're gonna be enjoying more beautiful blooms and supporting all of those native insects that are gonna be coming and expecting to find this stuff. And here we've just created several feet of habitat, home for the ecosystem, and a part of this food chain that's all around us. And you could be doing the same thing at home. So, again, if you live in California, this is the best time of the year, the fall, for installing your California native seedlings, little plants. Best time for growing, as these plants will get established right now in the fall. As the temperatures begin to cool, they'll continue to grow throughout the winter, and by spring produce a bountiful amount of flowers to support the insects and the birds and so much more. Again, if you live in California, we just did a few examples of California native plants, but if you live in Hong Kong, China, and you're watching this, you're not gonna plant any of these plants. You gotta find those plants that are native to you. And wherever else you may be in the world or other parts of the state, there's plants that are specific to you. So be sure to find those plants that are native to your region so you can support those plants as well as the insects and birds and animals that are native to your region. And by doing so, you'll be saving the world and saving the planet with your home garden. So if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, and most importantly, subscribe down below so it'll be connected to all the other educational videos from IVOrganic's 3-in-1 Tree Guard Paint. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.